Yes, Maddie Zweig, thank you for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, European and Arab leaders met in Paris to discuss Gaza's post-war future. The meeting was attended by leaders from Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Pakistan, Qatar, the UK, Germany, and other European Union countries. The core issues discussed included an international stabilization force, post-war governance in Gaza, and reconstruction. The French foreign minister has said that security and humanitarian aid were also discussed as Germany announced aid to Gaza. Now for this discussion, we go back to Matti Zweig. He's a geopolitical expert, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much, Matti, for staying with us. Now, Matti, what are European nations and also the Arab nations, some of Arab nations, excluding Iran, what are they to discuss, and what is expected from this talks?
Well, those agreements now have been held by different powers. It means the US, some Arab countries, and especially Qatar and Turkey, which was a new mediator in this last phase, and Egypt, which was sometimes a mediator and sometimes put off. Anyway, all these powers are trying not only to get the agreement implemented, they are also trying to get their governments involved in reconstructions. It means billions and billions of contracts to reconstruct everything. And now the Europeans, that they were so severe with Israel, that they were so against Israel, fearing their own voters and their own internal political problems, are now waking up and talking about being part of this process. I'm sorry to be cruel, but they just want a chunk of all the money that is going to be poured on the Gaza Strip in next years to reconstruct everything, especially France. How I said in the last exposition that Macron is under a lot of political pressure inside. He continues to talk not about peace with Gaza. He continued to talk about settlements in the West Bank. I mean, he continues with the Palestinian narrative, especially the extremist one, and I hope he's going to pay for that. He's going to be out of most of these contracts, but anyway, for sure, a lot of European companies want to be part of it. If we are going to talk about the political part of it, they also want to be part of the process, but we cannot avoid thinking that they were not part of the solution before, they were more part of the problem. So that's what is going on now.
Maddie, that's so interesting that you bring up that the money that's going to be poured into Gaza, France or some European countries want a chunk of it. What makes you say that?
Because he's, for a long time, under political pressure. It's very special what's going on in France. I mean, he loses more and more influence also in a European sphere and also in a world sphere, and also in his internal politics with a lot of pressure from the extreme right and the extreme left. It's like he stayed on the middle of the French politics, but with no real people supporting him. And then he has chosen to pressure Israel and to talk about genocide, to talk about two-state solutions, like he's not part of it, like he's not having his own problems also inside France, also with immigration, also with the political pressure he put with his own French forces in many countries in Africa, that some of them, they are throwing him out of the political games and being changed by other forces like the Russian, if I'm talking about African countries. He is like he's not really having a grip in any process now. He's desperate and he's using all what happened with Gaza as an excuse for his own failures. And this is terrible because he just has changed for the 5th time in the last year prime minister. I mean, this really shows the weakness he has and that he must maybe call to new elections or maybe just going out of politics. He's in this moment now, and we don't want to pay the price for that. So he's under pressure. That's what he's doing.
With that, I would like to thank Maddie for joining us and sharing that insight throughout this topic. Thank you very much. Now we move on to Asia. China has hit back at fresh U.S. sanctions targeting firms and vessels linked to Iranian oil exports, saying that Washington should stop resorting to sanctions and warning that Beijing will do what's needed to protect its energy security and the legitimate rights of its enterprises. The response came after the U.S. Treasury blacklisted more than 50 individuals, companies, and ships accused of helping Iran sell oil and gas. Among them is the Rizal Shihua crude oil terminal, a key Chinese facility identified as a major receiver of Iranian crude. Now for this discussion, we're joined by Andrew K.P. Long. He's a China strategist, joins us live from Hong Kong. Thank you very much, Andrew, for joining us again. Good to see you. Andrew, what's the relationship with China and Iran and with this news?
Well, of course, China doesn't want Iran becoming a nuclear power at the center. Middle East countries becoming nuclear power too, and destabilizing the region, and also setting an example of other countries around the world. So China doesn't want Iran to nuclearize. However, China doesn't agree. The sanction is of course, China has a special relationship with Iran as well. Iran, of course, sits at the strategic points in China's Belt and Road Initiative. And of course, as the whole Middle East is changing, the dynamics have changed since China broke a historic between Iran and its historic enemy, Saudi Arabia.
Sorry.
And because both countries, the whole Middle East, of course, is the world's largest exporter of oil, and the world's largest customer is no longer the United States. The United States is a net energy exporter. The world's biggest customer is China. So I think that a lot of dynamics have changed in the Middle East, and China doesn't want a nuclearized Iran, but China doesn't agree. The sanction is the answer, and indeed, the United States is sanctioning China. It's also imposing tariffs on China. In fact, not only on China, but left, right, and center all over the world, including American
Andrew, sorry, we might be having some connection issues with you, but thank you for joining us and sharing that insight. That was Andrew K.P. Long. Now we stay on this topic. Meanwhile, China's Commerce Ministry has condemned Washington's decision to add more Chinese firms to its trade blacklist, saying the move damages the rights and interests of businesses. Beijing has said that it will take all necessary measures to safeguard the legitimate rights of its companies and citizens. The latest additions to the U.S. entity list come as Washington targets Chinese firms allegedly linked to Iran's energy exports and dual-use technologies. Now we go back to Andrew K.P. Long. He's a China strategist, joins us live from Hong Kong. Andrew, what strategic advantage is now Beijing using for also this news and also the upcoming APEC summit?
Well, as I said, China doesn't agree that sanction is the word, and indeed China doesn't agree with the United States unilateralism. In other words, upending the whole world, bending the whole world to Americans' unilateral interests. And China wants to have more oil, which China will take a more useful role. And of course, China has the trump card very few countries has. It's the stranglehold over the rare earths supply chain. And this China's trump card against.
Sorry, Andrew, we have, seems like we have lost you over there, but that was Andrew KP Long, and he joined us as China strategist. Thank you very much, Andrew. Now we move on. Taking a dig at Taiwan, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Goh Jiakun has said that the biggest threat to peace across the Taiwan Strait are Taiwan's independence activities, and seeking independence by force will only drag the island into a conflict. This came after Taiwanese president has said in a speech that Taiwan is unveiling T-Dome air defense system to counter China threat, calling on China to renounce the use of force to seize the island. Taiwan is ramping up defense spending and modernizing its armed forces, but faces China that has a far larger military and is adding advanced new weapons such as stealth fighter jets, aircraft carriers, and a huge array of missiles. Now we move on. Myanmar's military junta has announced that Malaysia will send election observation teams to monitor the country's long-delayed elections, scheduled to begin in phases on December 28th since the 2021 coup. Myanmar has been in a civil war after the military ousted Aung San Suu Kyi's civilian government. Malaysia's Foreign Minister Muhammad Hassan has visited Myanmar's capital to meet the junta leader Min Aung Hlaing, affirming Malaysia's support as ASEAN chair. Over 5,000 candidates from 57 political parties are expected to participate in the election. The military claims the elections are a step towards national reconciliation. However, critics argue the polls are designed to legitimate continued military rule. Many opposition lawmakers plan to boycott the election, and armed rebel groups control parts of the country where the vote is blocked. Now for this discussion, we're joined by Dr. Nirwadi. She's a security analyst, joins us live from PsyOps expert, joins us live from Malaysia. Thank you very much, Dr. Noor, for joining us. Good to see you. Now, what more can you tell us about this news and Malaysia giving support as an ASEAN country to the upcoming elections in Myanmar?
Malaysia is the current chair of the ASEAN's community, ASEAN groups of countries. So as the leading of the current chair or holding the chairmanships of the ASEAN, it's important to Malaysia to play a vital role and part in looking into the prosperous community of ASEAN, particularly involving the democratic representations of ASEAN people. Because in ASEAN Declaration 2045, it been outlines lots of measurables, fundamentals, elements that's stated in ASEAN Political Security Committee, ASEAN Cultural Community, and ASEAN Connectivity, and of course in ASEAN Economic Community as well. So the form and functions of these declarations 2045 or 2045 Declaration of ASEAN is to ensure the accessibility and the inclusivity of ASEANs are being taken seriously. And of course, one of the main elements that we talk about is on the Myanmar democratic elected government. Since the coup in 2021, when Aung San Suu Kyi was basically being removed from the civilians government formed by her party and coalition, Myanmar had been in a state of unstable due to the presence of the situations that embarked them into the current situation. However, as a sovereign nations, all countries need to respect what is happening in Myanmar, and it is a form of their sovereignty. But nevertheless, ASEAN using its diplomatic capability, diplomatic tools must have to do some things in order to ensure the stability of ASEAN moving forwards in a very stable government, democratically elected people. And this news is something that ASEAN is waiting for. And perhaps if it is an earlier process, Malaysia will participate accordingly by being observer. However, there's no direct element of Malaysian statement, formally statement by the Malaysian government. It is news reported through the Myanmar junta leader of Malaysia involvement. But I do believe that this is a most welcome news, most interesting news. It's a great news for the ASEAN political community, the ASEAN's international community, and demanding the process to be in line with all the democratic human rights principles, and accordingly, it must give a fair, open, ruling elections to the people of Myanmar.
And now, given the planned boycott by opposition lawmakers and the exclusion of some voters, how credible can the December elections in Myanmar be?
I think it will be conducted by phase. The phase will be going to be on the 28th December, and in any form of election in the country, there will be some motion runs, particularly by the oppositions and some blocks of quarters of people, saying that there might be some misinterpretation, might be some mishandlings of elections. So this is where the importance of having a representative to look over into the voting selection process. So this is where the ASEAN can come in, and if what has been said by Malaysian Foreign Minister is taken place, so there might be a watch group to make sure that the transparency of the voting elections in Myanmar is going very well. And this is spirits of ASEAN, because ASEAN practice a very non-interference elements of governance in ASEAN, and this non-interference, non-interventions element have becoming the ASEAN strength for decades since the ASEAN establishment. And by having this representative, by having some transparency involved by the foreign delegates, particularly the current chair of ASEAN, which is Malaysia, I think this is something that will be applauded by the people, and it will be applauded by the people, and people will look at as a new move of looking into the better elements of Myanmar representative in elections. There might be some hundreds of parties involved, some 5,000 candidates, might be more as reported in the news. But again, this is becoming a first step, and we can't really push for any form of countermeasure taken by Myanmar government, because this is something not to be interfered. But as a ASEAN membership's current chair, Malaysia particularly, it is important to give some advice to take back the trust of the ASEAN community towards the establishment of a stable, democratically and valid elected government in Myanmar.
Thank you very much, Dr. Noor, for joining us and sharing that insight on this topic. Now we move on to our next news, and we stay in Asia. A 7.5 magnitude earthquake hit off of southern Philippines today, killing at least 2 people and damaging a hospital, schools, as well as power lines. Coastal areas were evacuated due to a possible tsunami threat. The quake was centered 43 kilometers east of Manay town in Davao Oriental. President Marcos has said that damage assessments and rescue operations are still ongoing. About 250 patients were moved from a damaged hospital. Several buildings, including an airport, were cracked but still operating. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Center reported small waves in the Philippines and Indonesia. 6 coastal provinces were warned to evacuate. Let's listen into one of the students' reaction.
Started shaking. I thought it was going to be like a typical weak earthquake, and then suddenly it got stronger to the point where like the ceiling started to crumble a bit. So we had to like just hid in our chairs. Everyone was like screaming, and then it went to the point where the whole panels, like in the body, it broke down. Like literally fell down. I even I think I inhaled some of the dust.